Hey everybody, welcome to SJGames Live. I'm Jimmy. We're here again with Ben, and we're going to do a little bit more Ogre Minis painting today to continue on with our Ogre Miniatures 4 backer kit campaign, which is still going. Brandon will drop a link over there. Got it right this time. In the chat. If you have not backed this set yet, it's for Ogre Miniatures Set 4, which kind of wraps up a lot of the major missing pieces from the Ogre Miniatures line that were not recast in plastic yet. So we're going to go ahead and if you're interested in that, hop over there, take a look. Some of the top tier pledges with like everything from previous versions and stuff have been filled up, but there's still plenty of miniature set 4 and some other stuff in there. And there's going to be, we're doing a Durgoland backer kit this time, so it's not a Kickstarter. And that's going to be, again, afterwards, there'll be add-ons and things like that for the pledges. Last week we were doing some painting of the tanks, and people asked a few questions about some other techniques like dry brushing and things like that. And so Ben was going to talk about some of those today.
Yep. Yeah. So, this time I brought along a couple that I started off. I gave them a black undercoat. I did not have any black primer, so it is black paint over white, but it still has the same effect. I also brought along a few of the contrast paints I have. I don't use them too much, but sometimes. So I've got some green orc flesh, some red, Blood Angels red, which spilled a little bit. Yay. I've got some Gryph-hound orange and some Meandan yellow, and I have a bunch of ogre stuff primed with that wraith bone that's supposed to be used as the base for all the contrast stuff. So we're going to see how that works. But first of all, if any of you are as confused about what slap chop is as I was the first time I heard about it, it's basically just dry brushing over black and then putting a contrast paint on it. So
Not pork chops?
what?
Not related to pork chops?
Nope. Nope. Or to that guy. I
You know,
mean,
the infomercial guy.
right. Is it? I mean, it's been a while, right? It's been
Slap
like 10 or 12 years, but everybody remembers that remix song, right?
I do,
Yeah.
but I remember some old memes. So
Yeah.
I
mean,
barely remember this morning.
that was like the era of auto-tuning everything. Like
yes,
that kicked off that era.
yeah.
And I don't really miss it, but it was fun. It was a fun time to be alive. Um, so yes, I guess without further ado, I've got off-white. I got all the way here. Or, sorry, cold white, Vallejo cold white. I got all the way here. Realized I did not bring my pure white, but that's fine. It seems like it's pretty much the same. So we're gonna get a little bit on the brush. This can be a primer to dry brushing for those of you who don't know. So the operative word with dry brushing really is dry. So you want to wipe off as much of that paint as possible. Just really get it off of there, and then you guys know me. I like to paint on my hand, so I'll test it on my skin a little bit to see if it seems like about the right way. But make sure there's no gloppiness, and then you just gonna kind of drag it on there. And as you can see, all these super sweet details that are in these Ogre minis are popping out.
I've been painting minis like this before slap chop was.
Yeah, and that is, I was gonna say that too. Like, this is not, I don't know who coined the term slap chop, but that was very clever of you. I'm not entirely sure what this has to do with slap chop, the device that you use to chop vegetables. Because I don't see any similarities. But whoever coined that term, man, you did it. It caught on. Everybody calls it slap chop now, it seems.
It's fun to say.
It is. But yeah, essentially it's just dry brushing. We've all done dry brushing
on a dark primer and then adding a wash.
It's almost like you're dry brushing on the Zenithal highlight yourself.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a little bit more control.
This is kind of exactly what I'm talking about. I did not get enough paint off the bristles, and so I've got this like sort of a smear now.
Oh, yeah.
That's no good. You don't want that. You can kind of get rid of it with a few more coats. But that's the thing. Dry brushing, it is a fast way to get the detail in your model across, but you still don't want to do it too fast. And by like, I was a little distracted. I was talking, but by like sort of rushing a little bit, I made a little mistake. It's not going to ruin the model, especially not if this was just we're trying to get a whole platoon of these guys or company of these guys on the table. Nobody's really going to notice that one little slip. But even though it's faster, you still want to kind of take your time, Make sure you get enough paint off the bristles, and then you're just going to go back multiple times. It can even help, honestly, like it seems like the paint is dry as soon as it goes on the model, but it really isn't.
Oh no, it is not.
So to get the best effect, a lot of times it helps to move between models. So we're going to put that one down. I'm going to move on to this Bigfoot.
Yeah, I started doing this because I was doing lots of batches, right? I was doing a whole bunch, like 20 guys at a time or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so by the time you finish with the 20th model, there's definitely the first ones usually have dry.
Yeah, and you can go back and
then you can actually put contrast or inks or whatever.
yeah, the first thing I did this with was skeletons way back in the day. Because before I came in, Ray and I were talking about painting skeletons, so that was one of the first things he painted, and that was one of my first big painting projects, was an army of skeletons. This is pretty easy.
First one I really had to learn to do something like this on was when I was playing Skaven,
Oh,
and I
Yeah,
had paid like just tons of ratlings.
Anything with lots of bones
I
or
love
lots of
those
fur.
guys.
So I had like I used
Yep.
a brown primer
Yeah,
and then like a light brown to just get all the fur on
yeah,
them, everything, and then I think I just did like the spear tips.
yeah. That could
'Cause I
that could
like-
work too.
I had like
Also chainmail.
6 or 7 regiments of like 30 each that had the field for like no points because they're ratlings.
Yeah,
So it was a ton. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out a way to do this. And so Googled some. And
Easy and repeatable results.
oh
is what you
wow.
need.
See, Jimmy, I was painting the Skaven before Google.
I-
So, even though you're older than me, so take that.
well, I say Google. It may have been Yahoo.
I want to say my first Skaven were from Advanced Hero Quest.
Wow.
Um,
It came, you know, because Hero Quest was like a board game, and Advanced Hero Quest was more like
Skaven were the first army I tried to play, but I didn't like back in the 90s how they just were the one static rat sculpt. So that's why I ended up moving to Undead. 'Cause
yeah, that's what they
that
had
was
in
the first posable kit. You could glue all their arms on differently, and they just looked more natural that way.
I think the only variety that the ones I had were shields. They had different shields.
Mm.
They were all holding. They were all in the exact same position. Maybe they had different weapons.
yeah, some of the more expensive units you'd field like 2 or 3 of had like 2 sculpts or something. Like the mace down and the mace up sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. And anyway, so back to these real quick, or back to just painting in general. So, slap chop, or at least dry brushing, you don't have to do it over black. I mean, I was talking about how the first thing I kind of did like this were those skeletons. The way those were done, oh, see, I've done it again, too much paint on the bristles. The way I did those, I didn't actually start with black. I started with this same kind of bone white that I primed all these models with. Then you did the wash, and then you did the dry brushing. So different order, and got fairly different results. And you can still, of course, mix that up any way you want. You can start with a contrast over white, and then you can dry brush that white, and it'll be a lot brighter. Although, as you can see, this does work really well for getting that detail out. I've only been messing with this for a few minutes.
Yep.
And we got nice, easy to follow lines down all the edges. Got all these little pieces sticking out. So it definitely works well. If I have time, maybe I can try some of the colors. I just don't know if they're going to dry in time. I can't imagine that they would. I probably should have started with them. But maybe let's do that
I'm
real
gonna set
quick.
those over here on the printing board real quick. Or you
Yeah. Actually, I should just not put any water in this brush. So those are kind of two examples. The Bigfoot, that's the larger tank. It's a mobile howitzer. Has had a lot more white onto it, so it's a little brighter. The missile tank has not had nearly as much white, but you can see that the detail all still sticks out really well. So now I'm going to grab some Blood Angels Red. This is a contrast paint. And I'm just going to do a couple of the units here with it. Now what I found, some Some of the contrast paints are better at bringing out detail, and some are better at just like giving you a really awesome base of like bright, vivid color. And if I remember correctly, the Blood Angels Red is more the second, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be really good in those details.
Hi, Paul. And also, a Howitzer Explosion guy asks, would you ever replace that dry brush? What's the thickest brush you'd recommend?
Probably. This is probably about as thick as you would want for minis this size. Like I could see if you like were doing tank, like 28 millimeter scale tanks. You could definitely go bigger. And I've done that. I've used like cheap house painting brushes. This brush, my dry brushing brush, is actually possibly 25 years old. You can see I've just built up that many years worth of paint on it, and it's not really good for anything but dry brushing anymore.
Brushes kind of graduate down to being dry brushes.
Yeah. But I've gotten some really good results just with like cheap Hobby Lobby brushes. Some well-meaning members of my family gave me some insanely cheap Hobby Lobby brushes for Christmas a few years back. And you know, I knew there was no way they were going to be good for like detail work, but they were fine for dry brushing. And you know, I say Hobby Lobby, you don't have to shop at Hobby Lobby. You can get them anywhere.
Walmart,
Yep. Or I mean, Michael's is also good. They basically have the same style.
the grocery store.
I've never seen any kind of hobby brushes.
Well, if you go to like the school supply section, they'll have like little water paints and stuff.
Oh, really?
Paintbrushes, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
It's that
it's worth
level of
trying,
quality.
maybe.
Or dollar store paintbrushes.
All right. So one thing I like to do, this might seem a little weird after I get all the ink on something, I sort of tap it, and that kind of just causes it to spread out a little bit more. Might help if you've got any that is sort of like getting
Pulling.
Yeah, I guess that's the word. But you get those streaks across, streaking.
Yeah.
You know, in the not in a safe for work sort of way, streaking. You'll get these big streaks down the side just from unevenness, and so that tapping, if you do it before it dries, can help even it out. Let's do another one with red. What do you guys think? We have a GEV. I mean, I basically just brought one of everything. If you've looked at the campaign graphics, these are all the minis that were photographed for the unpainted shot section of the Kickstarter campaign. And so I just primed them and got them down here.
Now, for people who don't know, this isn't a normal paint, this is a contrast paint.
Yeah.
Which is that's what Games Workshop calls it, at least, right?
Right. And then there are similar products. There's some by Army Painter called Speed Paints. And other companies are doing them more and more. But the idea is it's a thick, transparent coat that will sort of settle into the lines, into the recesses, and so it kind of creates like an instant shading effect.
There's a little color on the higher spots and more pools in the lower spots.
Exactly.
It's really viscous and translucent at the same time.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and do this GEV APC. Now, one of the things they say is the best way to use contrast is to try to do it one section at a time, that you don't actually want to, like you would never want to dip it, which seemed a little strange to me, but I believe them. You know, I'll take their word for it.
Well,
there used to
actually
be-
dipping the miniatures
Yeah,
into
there
it.
used to be dip
Yeah.
paints.
That was Army Painter. Like that was
that's how
their
it
thing,
started,
right?
They'd sell you a big can of that.
Yeah. I mean, before that, people used wood lacquer.
Oh yeah, like wood varnish.
Wood
right?
varnish, yeah. But the important point, whether you're using contrast or whatever, what you do not want to, you want the whole thing kind of wet, but you don't want to have it dry and then go over it again with your wash, whether it's contrast or whatever, because then you'll get a pretty noticeable darker patch where the wet wash goes over the dry wash.
Now, I remember back in the day using washes. How are these different from washes?
Honestly, they're really not that much. They're just a little easier to control because they're thicker.
They're better marketed.
So they're the slap
And-
chop of washes.
No, they actually are like a different formula.
Yes.
Because Army Painter, they had speed paints when they first came out. They would reactivate if you went over them again with another contrast
Ooh, that's
or
not good.
another speed paint color. But then they came out with a speed paint 2.0 that doesn't do that. So it's definitely not. It's more than just a wash.
Well, that's
right?
important because it means the binder wasn't very good. So
Right.
they weren't. Because if you guys know, paint it's three things. It's pigment, binder, and thinner, basically.
Yeah.
So with acrylic paint, the binder is an acrylic medium, and that when that dries, it is meant to form to a solid sort of coat. Like it's a hard shell with the pigment contained inside. It should never wash. Like acrylic paint should always be waterproof. Should be able to dunk a finished model in water and not have any paint leave.
Right.
I mean, people. That's why trying to strip paint off a model is a pain in the butt because it sticks. So that's weird. It means that they didn't really have a good binder on. Oh, I missed a spot. Jeez. This is part of why I can't use washes because I miss spots. All right, so we'll have those two as our reds. The first one's drying pretty good if you want to put it up there.
Oh yeah, it's pretty red.
And then you can if you want to put the GEVA, you can see it.
You didn't paint the turret though. So
Did I not?
you got different plans for that?
Oh, well, that would be metal anyway, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, I should have just painted it. I don't know why I didn't.
I mean, you can paint metal red.
But you know what's funny though? I actually I was going through all my paints today because I thought I normally when I'm doing more like showcasey stuff, I do non-metallic metals. But for this, I was like, oh, and bring in some real metals so you can dry brush metal. I don't have any metal paints anymore. I've just gone so deep into like the NMM. I think I threw them out a while back because it had been so long since I used them. They were starting to dry out. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
need these anymore. So I don't have any metal paints. We probably have some around though.
I do understand. We had a question on or comment on an earlier stream about Ben's paint storage method hurting someone's soul.
Oh no.
This is not how he normally stores his paint. This is how he gets them from from his house to the office
Is
when we
someone in
come to
chat?
do this. No. I just remember seeing that comment
Yeah,
from
just
previous
a little
time.
box anyway. But yeah,
Like, no, this is not Ben's normal paint storage method or setup. This is what he brings into the studio in his car with him.
honestly, it would probably hurt people's souls because my desk is a mess. I am not an organized painter. I am a complete mess. There's little bits of middies everywhere, chunks of stuff.
I got
Yeah,
tattoo ink bottle things, or maybe it was for like for nail shops or tattoo artists,
mhm.
but they're like tiers.
Oh yeah.
And
I try all that stuff. I've tried it all over the years, and it always just ends up with the bottles back in front of me. I pull them off the thing. I don't put them back because I might need them again in a few minutes. So why would I put them back? And I just don't. When I'm done painting for the day, I don't like want to just be like, okay, well now it's time to organize my space. Like, nope, we're gonna leave it a mess.
I don't have a ton of paints, and so I've just got one of those laser cut things you put together that's got probably room for like 16, 24 paints. And a couple little drawers and a little surface because I don't also have dedicated space to paint either, so I'm gonna like take that wherever I'm gonna set
Yeah,
up.
I am.
And I
am
use it like
not
maybe twice a year. So
I'm not that person. I'm very disorganized. All right, on to the orc flesh. So this is green, obviously, because it's GW. Orcs are always green with Games Workshop.
what other colors would you paint them?
Well, I mean, if it's Lord of the Rings, right? They were like kind of like a reddish brown.
They were all kinds of colors.
In Fantasy Trip, orcs are Neanderthals, so I believe they're flesh colored. If there are any Fantasy Trip fans in there, they might correct me, but I mean, Neanderthals could have been green. We don't know. We don't have any like to study now.
didn't quite have digital cameras.
Yeah,
Considering there's no other like green primates, I doubt.
yeah, it does seem highly unlikely. Or really, any green mammals. Like when it comes to brightly colored mammals, we have those crazy baboon noses. It's weird purple bluish,
Yeah.
vivid colors. Other than that, mammals are pretty dry.
Usually.
I guess it's like got these nice orange tigers. Those guys are pretty rad.
Yeah, some cats are really cool colors. Dogs.
And I guess you do get some blues on sea mammals. Or at least that's what they look like.
Kind of grayish a lot of
Yeah.
times.
But not a green, I don't think.
Well, you got to think most mammals are like land animals. They're gonna want to blend in with the environment.
Yeah. Weird animal fact.
Yep.
There's of all the blue animals in nature, whether it's blue jays or butterflies or millipedes or fly, whatever, there's only like 2 instances in the entire animal kingdom of actual blue pigment. Every other blue you see in nature, it's only the blue light wavelength reflected back. Like it's some weird optical cancellation of all other color wavelengths with only blue reflected back.
No actual pigment.
Right. So all the blue, like I think like every blue bird is that way, and then there's like 2 species of butterfly that actually have blue pigment. Very strange.
Well, and technically, isn't that how light works?
We got a green one.
Like light is just what's reflected back, or color is just what light is reflected back.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know enough about light and physics to be able to explain why pigment is different than the other thing, the reflection.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to divert us real quick to talk about the backer kit campaign. We are sitting at 7 days left for Ogre Miniatures 4. We are at 984 backers, so tons of you guys came out for this. We thank you so much for hopping in. We are well over our goal, and some of the let me see if I can find the pledge levels over here. We still have plenty of seats in the Ogre Miniatures 4. We still got about 100, just under 100 seats in the Lieutenant Pledge, which is Ogre Miniatures 4 and the Ogre Mark 4 and Doppelsoldner from set 3. We've got some of the Captain Pledge left, which is set 4 and it's 3 set copies of set 4. So if you really want to build up on these units, there is a major level that I think we added, which is Ogre Miniature set 3 and 4, Ogre Miniature 2nd edition PDF, and Ogre 6th edition, the board game. And then the general is the kind of starter kit. It is all claimed out. There's set 3 and 4, the battle box, which is set 1 and 2 minis, and the 2nd edition rulebook. So we still have some there. We still got almost 1,000 of you in here. Great to see us break that 1,000 backer level. And 1 week left to get in on this. So that's. Do you want any of those?
We just need 15 more. We're those 15 people.
Right. Surely we can get 15 more.
In a week, I hope.
But yeah, these are the.
Get the word out.
What we've got so far on the screen. What Ben's. So the black ones are the beginning of what's called the slap chop method. They're prime black and dry brushed white to different degrees. The red ones, the tank and the GBPC, are a contrast paint on your kind of bone white primer.
I think it's called Wraithbone.
Wraithbone primer. And then the green ones are the same Wraithbone primer, and that is the green contrast paint.
Yeah, Orc Flesh.
Orc Flesh.
And just now, I've got another one to put up there.
Got another one.
This is Gryphound Orange.
Gryphound Orange, an orange contrast paint. We're kind of
That one went so fast I couldn't even swap to.
Well, I mean, that's why this stuff is so popular. It looks pretty cool, and it goes really fast.
No,
this is just contrast.
These are contrast paints, yeah, though.
Oh yeah.
The 2 black and white ones are slap chop method, or at the starts of it. We still have to do the wash on them, right?
Yeah.
But the others are all contrast paints, which are just a primer level and then the wash. And if you want to hop back over to Ben before he finishes the next orange, then you have to hurry.
Yeah.
Quick, catch him in the act.
The problem was he's painting the ones that are so small I can't even zoom in on.
Yeah, the little inventory. These are some very wee lads, for sure. They are bitty.
They're hard to see.
Glad we made today the painting day. It warmed up enough so your paints don't freeze on the drive over.
Yeah.
It was like my pipe that busted before busted again.
Oh no.
And luckily it wasn't nearly as bad this time. It didn't there was no water coming through the wall or any of that kind of stuff. It just kind of leaked out of the bottom. So we got that fixed, but it was and then it's 70 degrees again. So it was freezing, and then
Yeah,
it was freezing yesterday morning, and now it's 70.
for the record though, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we were in the teens to 20s Fahrenheit,
Mhm.
and today it's 70 out.
Yeah, and I mean it was freezing yesterday morning.
Yeah.
So. All right, here are those infantry.
We got a question.
I'm not a mini painter, so bear with me. The highlighting technique is cool, but would it work with the red or green painted minis? Different contrast color, perhaps. So you mean, could you do the highlighting on the color the color wash minis?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do. That's why
Like,
I've gone.
It's
gotten
basically
started.
it's a different order. So for the contrast paints, he's doing the contrast first, and then the dry brushing is going to happen.
Yeah.
For the other slap chop method ones, you do the highlighting first, and then the color is going to happen after that. Sir MV, yeah, in Austin. Do you want any of these back, Ben, or are you working on a new one?
I'm still working on a new one. Oh no, this one came off. It's a little face thing. And yeah, if you guys do notice, all of us in the studio don't even think about this anymore. But I've got all of them stuck on these little sort of push pin things, just to make it easier to paint. If you want to put them on bases, you can always just glue them to the bases to start. But these are just going to be free and loose, so it's easy to just shove a little thumbtack or push pin up there with a little super glue, and it gives you something to hold. I have literally dozens of these that I do this with.
Is that just stands? Old
Yeah,
stands?
it's an old mini base.
Okay.
I use for some of my minis. I'll buy the cool fancy resin bases and stuff. So then I don't need the bases that they come with anymore. So they just
Right.
end up sitting around. And then if I can glue a thumbtack to them or a push pin, whatever you want to call it, and then they become a stand. And this even works as long as it's not too heavy. This will even work for a bigger mini too. All right, and now we got this is the light tank, and we're gonna go for Yandon yellow.
Jedi Kaya, welcome in, welcome back. Paul, you are 9 degrees at your house? Yeah.
Whew. Nasty.
I mean, we do sympathize. The difference though is we despite the fact that we get oh boy,
Oh no.
I have sort of a backup.
We're not
when
built
that
for that
happens.
kind of weather.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. We don't really we have very few ice trucks, and our homes aren't designed for that.
They don't usually insulate the garage.
No.
Yeah, I know. And so I was reading something. It was like, why do we drip our pipes and everything, and nobody up north has to do that most of the time? And the answer is, well, they don't insulate ours as well. They put them in exterior walls,
Right.
and various other things, because our houses are built to withstand the heat rather than withstand the cold
Yeah.
more. So a lot of the ventilation, a lot of the stuff is designed to get heat out of the house more easily, just by nature of it existing, rather than having to use the air conditioner as much. And that's counter purposes to keeping heat in the house, which is what we need during these things. That's why we have more problems dealing with it.
Yeah. All right. So on our little light tank that decided it did not want to stay on a base, we've got the Yandon.
Yeah, go ahead and zoom in on that,
Yeah,
Brandon.
the
'Cause I'm gonna be able to
yellow.
throw it up on
I'm
that.
trying. He moved his hand.
I think
Quit moving, man.
I like
Stop
that.
moving around,
I
Ben.
think that one worked pretty well.
Yeah, especially for yellow, because that's notoriously hard to do, right?
Yeah. It seems like there's
Oh, yeah.
a really good distinction between the yellow on the hull and the yellow and on the little cracks.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's one of the Citadel.
Yep, that's another contrast.
That one is real good.
I mean, that's
There's
just
a
an
few that
interest.
are,
Even if you're
super
not,
pigments, right?
yeah, even if you're not planning to do fast army paints, like a full contrast thing, it's still just good to know that this exists.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
got to be other uses for it to really make things yellow them out, you know.
And it's still wet. When it dries, it's gonna look even better.
There you go. You'll stick on there whether you like it or not. You little tank. You little tank, you. All right, why don't you hand me back our slap chops
All
while
right.
you're over there?
Here. Here. So we're taking the slap chop method ones that we dry brushed, based and dry brushed, primed and dry brushed, and then now you're going to be adding some color to them, right?
Yeah. So I'm actually gonna mix it up a little bit, and not just do one color all over like I did these quick guys over there. So we're gonna do a green hull first. And this goes back to what we are talking about. What's the difference between contrast and just inks? And it's just that it's easier to control. So you can do something like this. And
This stuff moves around.
yeah.
That's what I've always felt. Main differences.
Whereas the inks or washes just kind of flow
They
over it, and
kind of
that's what you
sit
got.
wherever you stuck them. This stuff is more.
I see. I think it's the opposite
Yeah.
way.
I would think is the
Like the inks seep into everything, and this just more kind of sits on the surface. I mean, it still gets in. It still sort of gets into stuff, but
They move differently. They take getting used to.
yeah. See, this turret I just glued on because when I was putting it together, it was just to get a photo real quick, and I didn't really think about that I might go in and paint it. All right, so we're starting with the green hull on this guy. Let's do the missile tank. Do the same. So these are gonna have some kind of weird parrot color scheme. The 4 contrast paints I brought are very like tropical parrot. Green, red, yellow, orange.
making them look like the macaw tanks.
Right. I mean, like we were talking about last week, the Ogre War is everywhere, so they want to color their tanks after the regional birds somewhere in South America.
Yeah,
Who are we to stop?
we were talking about that is that the stealth isn't really something that most of these things do, especially the ogres, because how do you stealth a
Yeah,
2-story tank? And also, much of the game is you are technically looking at a commander's display through some sort of a computerized system and stuff. Mainly some
those are
convenient
kinda
excuses to
dry
not have
slowly.
to like paint everything one color, drab black, and hide it up.
Right. Well, plus tiny camo is hard to do.
Right.
Camo's a tricky thing to get right on minis anyway because camo exists to
Hide the lines.
hide
of
the
things,
lines
yeah.
exactly. And when you're painting a mini, you want to emphasize all those lines. You want to bring out that detail. All right, so I'm waiting for that first bit of green to dry.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and do, I'm really worried about contaminating my colors with one. Really make sure this brush is clean.
Can you pull
There's
these red ones
no
back
green
for
ink left.
next stuff then?
Oh yeah, you could do that.
Instead of drying up here.
Some end and yellow. Some of this ink. This is handy stuff. I think another thing you have to think about with this contrast that I'm just really sort of taking into account right now is be careful about the amount of water on the brush. You don't want to dilute it too much or it loses the efficacy.
Was that kind of slow flowing?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the way it works, it needs to be the sort of thickness that it is and no thinner if you want it to sink into the detail. Because can send her a little yellow infantry over there. So with this red one, so the contrast paint seems to have done its job pretty well. We've got, except for where I missed, which was, wow, a lot of places. It's done its job pretty well, and it's flowed into all the cracks and stuff. So what I'm actually gonna do, instead of just doing white, one of the ways I like to highlight red, I mean, there's a couple ways, and I can actually probably do both. That's why I painted two things. Yellow and orange can do good highlights, and then flesh tones are also good, because they have a little bit of orange built in, rather than just being pure.
You look for this one.
Just, oh yeah, ha, Jimmy found the one I was looking for. I already took it out.
You mean like this?
Yep. Shake it a little bit.
Yeah, you can already see on these the ones that are drying here as that green's drying. You can on the slap chop ones, you can see the highlighted areas coming through a little bit better.
So let's try one with yellow. I'm gonna dry brush yellow over the red.
Here.
So glad I remembered to bring my towel today. 'Cause, and
Gotta remember your towel.
that's another thing. Yeah.
Going
The
with
like
that.
an old cotton rag like this works so much better for dry brushing than a paper towel, because it's more absorbent, it's more durable. So you're not getting like tiny little flecks of wood in your brush,
Maybe those
which
vipers
you
out there.
actually do. Yeah, you actually will get that with if you try to use paper towels. So if you have a beat up old t-shirt that you're just never going to wear anymore, turn that into your paint rag. It will really help a lot if you're going to dry brush stuff. All right, so let's get some of that yellow on there. Now hopefully this will really make it vibrant, that extra yellow, assuming this thing doesn't pop up thumbtack like it looks like it wants to do. It's important to me that you stay put with tank. Don't go, so you just hold it. I'm not doing the side at that moment. Oh, I got it off the camera, didn't I? Sorry. Brandon, I'm really making you
Brandon's trying to follow
trying
you.
to keep up with my hands.
It's
I'll try to keep
almost
it
like a video
centered.
game.
Nope. Stay on target.
I don't protect high seam sets for that. Follow Ben's hand around the camera. That's fun.
I mean, I got Power Wash Simulator.
They've got Farming Simulator 20 something at this point. So either they're popular or they just make one every year. They even have games where you build computers.
Seen what are the ones that get kind of like this Power Wash Simulator? There's one called Unpacking, which is basically you're like
Right.
packing and
It
unpacking your
happened.
house.
It
Oh,
popped off.
right onto the floor.
No.
Now we're gonna get all sorts of extra things in the paint.
Yeah. Fortunately, there are no pets in this office, so I mean,
Not
that's
too much hair.
always yeah, that's always the biggest concern when you drop a mini at home with fresh paint on it. Is that it's going to end up with little hairs.
You
all
pull
over
out
it.
and you get that line going across it.
Yeah.
Oh, that missile tank's starting to show the highlights pretty well. Rotate it around so when it gets back around, you can see it.
All right. We can put this yellow one up there now. Or well, it's red with yellow. So that's red contrast with some yellow dry brush. Then I'm going to try the basic skin tone. The APC, and these I am probably for sure gonna knock these little guys off. We'll see. They're designed so that you can, if you want, you can pull them off and on of the infantry bases and onto the APC.
Like actually pick up the guys, transport them somewhere, offload them somewhere. Yeah.
So you can pull them all off, which maybe I should just do that. So have these little tabs. And you guys get to decide whether you're going to glue them or try to do that. I think it's probably just better.
If you got enough, if you're tight on minis, you should order more. But
Just a bit more.
but also yeah, you can pop them in an hour. You can just say like, look, this one has guys in it, and just keep record of how many guys are in it, sort of thing. Paul is surprised you don't wear a white cotton glove for this technique.
Mm.
So you can
Then I
just,
could
since you
oh,
continue to
yeah.
paint your hand.
Yeah. I'd have to get a new one each time I dry brush though. It sort of builds up.
You
Makes
can
the
still
skin
dry
on it.
brush your bare hand.
Yeah. All right. So
But then you get the fur in the
we
glove
need to get
and the paint.
a little more paint on there.
I like to look hard in the game of life. How many kids can fit? Well, you got the six pegs, but then you can drop them in between the other ones. Balance one on the back. 8, I think.
Not working as well as I expected it to.
That one just not mixing real well.
I think, yeah. These colors, often you got to give them really good shakes when they're new, and this is a new bottle. I wasn't really thinking about. But then once you do, it seems like it stays it stays mixed. You don't really have to do it every time you open a bottle.
Just as it sat on the shelf for a long time in the store, it's kind of separated out.
Yeah.
You ever put like mixer balls in your paints?
No.
The new ones I got from Army Painter came with those to put in there. So I did it in those because they all come in those dropper bottles.
Yeah.
Seems like an easier way to
If it
help
comes
get
with
mixed
them,
up.
then yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Like their newer set came with like extra mixer balls and stuff. So you put these in here. I'm like, sure.
That probably helps. That's one of the reasons why I don't really use army painters, because I find that no matter how much I shake them, they don't get shook, they always just squirt out, and it's a huge, I mean, it's just like that, but always you get a big blob of clear binder and then pigment, but not in the right ratio where you can mix them together with your brush and actually do anything, because all the pigment's on the bottom. Did it again. Didn't get enough pigment off. But yeah, this is something, you can kind of try different things until you hit a technique that works right for you. The contrast paint didn't seem to go onto this one quite as evenly as it did on the tank. I've got some really dark areas in certain places.
Mm.
But it did still do a good job bringing out the detail, just not as evenly.
But yeah, all of these methods are pretty fast, as you can tell by we're not that long into the stream, and we've gotten
Yeah,
aside from the
I'm
priming,
running out of minis to paint.
except for the priming, we're on what's 2, 4, 6, 8, like 10 miniatures. As opposed to we did 2 last time, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for a lot of people, this would be enough.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
going back with metal and trying to get the like hatches or gun turrets, whatever you think would look cooler as metal than the base color, that could take a while too, probably longer than any of these steps.
Now, do you ever dry brush metallics?
Metallics are the best to dry brush. That's
Oh.
why I was sad I didn't have any to bring today.
Chainmail.
Yeah.
There's nothing more satisfying.
Back when I used to play War Machine and I was painting Warjacks all the time, I used a lot of metal, and so my go-to was kind of similar to Slap Chop, but I would start with gray, then you dry brush the metal, and then you wash. So kind of similar to what we're doing here. And they have this armor wash. And part of the reason why it works really well with metals is metals tend to dry with a little bit of a smoother surface. So it, if you start with like this gray undercoat, and then you dry brush metal over it, the ink is more drawn to the more porous undercoat, and so it gets pulled away from the dry brushed metal on the surface. But it was just a really great, fast way. I mean, it's exactly like what we're doing here.
To get good metal
Yeah,
looks up.
Put down gray, or with metal you can use whatever color you want. If I want it to look older, start with brown, dry brush metal over brown, and you get old metal.
You're going like a Mad Max Apocalypse
Yeah.
rusted out kind of look.
And you can even go all the way down to orange, which can look a little weird if you don't do it right. Sometimes it almost looks like it's glowing when you get the metal, when you get that orange in the crevices. But yeah, that can work too if you do it right for like really rusty stuff. Okay, let's put that guy out there. And maybe hand back the slap chopped ones.
Got it. Let's see. This goes with welcome back. This one coming back. And let's make the green out here. And these two are the red inked.
And then dry brush.
Dry brush with different colors. One is dry brushed yellow, and one's dry brushed like a flesh.
And I think if we have time, I'll probably go back with a second coat of the contrast over the APC.
Over this one.
Yeah. And maybe
It
thin that
looks
a little bit and just see if I can get a little bit more color out of it.
a little less so in person, but on camera it looks really weathered. Like it picked up those edges, but it looks like it's really been like a worn, like seen through
Yeah.
a lot of
It's seen some stuff, man, and
Yeah.
some things.
Couple of ogres. 5 ogres later.
Or even some fencers. Yeah, I should have dry brushed them both a little more. There's not really, it's not helping the missile tank that I left a little more black showing. Especially with this yellow one, it sort of appears so much better on the mobile howitzer.
So if you're going to go back over it with, especially with darker colors, you need to do a little bit more dry brushing. It seems
Yeah.
like.
More contrast.
No, more the initial dry brush if you're putting contrast over it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean contrast. I meant
More contrast.
more
Yeah.
contrast.
Right.
It's not our fault that they gave it a name that also is a word that means stuff within the context of.
Because while it might look like enough
Value.
initially, you're covering it up some later, and it still needs to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need that that good base color with the contrast paints.
Well, the
Well, you
missile
can
tank
also
looked
just
good.
use white.
The missile tank looked good, but it could have looked more dingy and gritty. But it looks like maybe losing some of that once the
Yeah.
contrast paint goes over it.
The
So you might have to go a second pass of
yeah, the highlights aren't going through as well.
highlighting.
Oh, that reminds me. Have you ever used oil?
I haven't. I know people who use oil washes though. Okay.
The whole blanketsu stuff. And I think it's popular in the
Oil washes.
like the war miniatures where they do all the tanks
Some
and
options
stuff.
here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, let's try dry brushing really vibrant green onto this GEV. But anyway, these are all just techniques you can try. Because last time I was in here doing a much more like methodical kind of studio level paint job, and this is I'm trying to do this week. Different things that can be a little bit more helpful if you want to get a whole army on the table.
So you can see the difference in the missile tank and the mobile howitzer here is the howitzer's really got a lot of those highlights standing out now. Especially on the
missile tank. Not so.
missile tank's a little, he may need some extra highlight later. So you want to make sure when you do that initial pass, if you're contrasting over it, that you get enough.
Yeah, do a
The
few
lighter in
do a
there.
few layers of dry brush. Because I rushed it a little bit.
That's true. We had limited time.
Yeah. Could you water down the standard paints to create a poor man's contrast paints, at least to go over slap chop minis?
Yeah.
No. Ben disagrees. So this goes back
Depends
to
what
what I
you
was.
water it down with.
What's because
Okay.
it's because they're not like,
You don't want to
Hey.
water it down with water, though.
if it's just watered down, then it's more like a wash than it is the actual contrast.
Well, it doesn't
paint,
even
right?
work well as a wash. Because I mean, this all goes back to what I was talking about the binder. You need to have the binder, or it does what's called ringing. Like it as it dries,
Right.
it will
It shrinks.
yeah, it shrinks, and you get these weird sort of lines all over everything. It just doesn't work as well.
Yeah, it's like a weird banding effect.
Yeah,
But
and
if
it also
you,
just doesn't go over as evenly.
you can buy the binder stuff. It's usually called like medium, like
Yeah.
Liquitex acrylic medium.
Yeah.
You can make your own contrast.
Yeah,
Or you can turn any regular paint kind of into a contrast paint.
yeah. Before they existed, I had this trick that I would do to get on white minis where I would mix black ink with sort of a bluish gray,
Mm.
and then you could put that over like white minis. I did this painting stormtroopers for a commission. This is where I figured this out. And it ended up covering in a way where the white still came through. I did still have to like paint some white over it, but it worked a lot like a contrast paint before anybody had ever heard of them or knew what they were. But I would still say like, because I mean, you're talking about buying another product. Like, there's no way to just like make cheap contrast paint. You got to use some kind of real wash or something. This one's working really good. I think this green dry brushing over the orc flesh contrast paint is turning out really well. Better than our experiment with the red. I guess I can try these a little bit. See how they work out. But the infantry are so tiny, I feel like it might be best to just leave them alone. What do we have? We have a light burn out on us, Jimmy. I was so
Give them a little
focused.
highlight there.
Yeah.
But you'll like turn off. Fix it.
We're trying this
like
new light out, and it looks like it. Does it turn back on?
I don't know if I went to sleep or what. We'll look at it later.
I mean, it has been about an hour. So.
All right. And I'm going to do one more layer. This is another thing with dry brushing. You can do multiple layers and build it up, but you have to be careful because each subsequent layer, you got to get even more paint off your brush, and you got to be even more sparing with it, or the intermediate layer of color can't be seen, right? So I started with white that had been painted with orc flesh contrast paint, and now, and then I did a dry brush of what it's called AK frog green, which is a really vivid yellowish green. And now I'm getting some AK ivory on here. Still too much green in this brush. So it looks like we had a total light failure, and now Jimmy is gone. He's come back with a new light. All right. Okay, so we're gonna get absolutely as much ivory off this brush. We're going back and giving this GEB a little dusting. Trying to get it in frame. Frame it out a little bit. So just really thin. Only want to pick up like corners and edges. We don't want to make this thing white. We just want to add a little bit more definition. A little more paint on there. Yeah, so I think this is much more of a success. You want to put that. We still having light problems?
We just
See you sneaking off.
right over here on the side camera. For a second.
He's the real ogre. So yeah, I don't know. Did anybody have any other questions? Because I've put paint on just about everything I brought in today. But yeah, this is just some of the things you can do with washes and dry brushing. Kind of interesting trying the slap chop. I've never tried that before.
These guys are
not from oh yeah, you can put those up there. They're just yellow.
I'd say that we hadn't done anything new to them yet.
No,
These guys are.
I guess I can go ahead and try dry brushing some ivory in the yellows.
You want to do anything with them yet? With the slap chopped ones? Or?
No, I think they're
Probably
sufficiently slap chopped. It looks like the orc flesh contrast is really dark. I don't know if it's the best contrast to use if you want to do a green with a slap chop.
Yeah, because it kind of
I've
ate
never-
up a lot of the highlight.
Yeah, I'd never tried it before. But I know obviously there are other greens. I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but a lighter green might be better if you're gonna do a green on slap chop. But I think the howitzer worked out pretty well. It's because that's the one that I took more time with and did
Yeah.
more white dry brushing on.
Yeah, everything picked out pretty well on that. And then go back and add a few chrome or metal details where you want to, and it's
Yep.
done.
That would be the next step. Oh, I remember you. You're the one that wanted to fall off the base. Yellow tank.
Do you guys have any questions for Ben on how any of these turned out, or other ways to work on them?
And it's just like any technique, I don't use contrast paints a lot, so I'm not totally ready to predict what all they'll do.
Right.
So with a little bit of practice, I would not be surprised if anybody watching this could get better results than I did just now.
He's ours. Yes. What's your hourly rate? But yeah, I mean, last time we worked on these two models, right? These two red ones.
Yeah.
Move some stuff around up here. And so last time we did about an hour and a half stream, and we got those two.
And it was also the second stream that I done stuff with them on, and I started with an airbrushed undercoat.
Right. And then the other 10 models we've done today in the first hour or so. So you can go full on photo quality, which is what we get Ben for most of the time, right? Because he's very good at that. But you can knock out a lot of these, especially if you're buying like the 3 sets of Ogre Minis Mark IV that you got to get painted. You don't have to take that much time, and you can still get pretty good results with some of these other methods: the contrast paints, dry brushing, slap chopping, all that sort of stuff. And you come out with pretty good results still, especially if you're gonna if you hold the two up next to each other, the one that you spent 4 hours on is obviously going to look better.
Yep.
But when you have 40 minis out there on the table, no one's going to be expecting any given one that closely.
Here are yellow guys.
Guys out here. These around.
Yeah, is there anything else we want to talk about? Oh, hand me the APC, and I will do that one last coat. See if I can improve it with a second coat of Blood Angels Red, or if I'll just make it worse. Oh, and as an other thing, you can also do contrast over contrast and get some really vivid effects going. Like if you do a yellow, like doing the Yandin yellow,
Yeah.
maybe over red. Just get a little punchier.
Or do like parts of it red, leave parts of it the base, and then do
Yeah.
yellow over everything.
This time I actually am gonna thin a little bit the contrast because I just want to get more color back on this APC. So I feel like we lost something.
Howitzer Exposure Guy asks, are there any recommendations for folks printing minis on a FDM printer to minimize the layer lines?
FDM.
I think that'd be a branding question for people in this room.
My recommendation would be get a resin printer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't know how.
Unless
like,
you're doing like a really large, tank or something.
Or any painting techniques to try to minimize the lines that are already in it.
I know some people will just prime the absolute heck out of it.
Painting them. Well, you know what you can do, even if you don't have a resin printer, you can still buy bottled resin and paint it over the surface so that fills in those gaps.
And
And then
UV
cure it
zap
with a
it.
UV light or put it in the sunlight or something.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was getting at when I say people will just prime the absolute heck out of it because
Yeah.
they'll just keep spraying it until it all fills in. There are even some primers I think now that do that on purpose. I just couldn't tell you a brand. All right, here's that last one. So that is kind of like a double slap chop, maybe. We started with white, then Blood Angels Red contrast, then dry brushing with basic flesh, so light Caucasian flesh, and then another Blood Angels Red contrast over it, which I do think is a little better than just the contrast alone, but I didn't like the in-between step where it was dry brushed over. That didn't look so hot. It's that green APC. I think that worked out the best as far as like start with a contrast, then do a dry brush, and then that would be a second dry brush. So yeah, I think we're coming close to time now.
Yeah,
So anything about the campaign
we
to
are
put out there before we go?
Again, there's 7 days left to go in Ogre Mini Set 4. You should be able to get additional sets in the post-campaign mode as add-ons. But there are still several levels that will let you pick up the base set Mini Set 4, or Mini Set 3 and 4, some with the rules and some with extra sets of 4 out there. We've got 985 backers right now, so hopefully we can get that number up to 1,000 in the last 7 days here. But we appreciate everybody's back. If you've got questions, feel free to ask them in the campaign, or send an email through to help@sjgames.com, and they can send tickets up there. Thank you for coming in and painting with us again, Ben. We appreciate it.
No problem. It's always fun.
Brandon, if you can drop the link for the campaign one more time, if you're not watching this on the campaign page.
Boom.
That is where you can go check the Ogre's Mini Set 4 out. And next week, we will be back here, same time, Thursday, 2 p.m. Central, with Gru, because Gru is going to be hitting stores next week, I think on Wednesday. So
Brew is fun. I wish I could come play, but I think I'm going to be too busy.
well, let us know if you can get in, and we'll try to make some room for you. But we'll be back here next week with Gru to celebrate it being in stores and available at your local game store.
Should bring some cheese dip.
If you're bringing cheese dip, definitely.
I'm not. I don't know. I don't think I could bring cheese dip. You should bring cheese dip.
I should bring cheese
Somebody
dip.
somebody bring the cheese dip.
I got some queso at home.
That's cheese dip. Queso
Yeah.
is cheese dip.
Queso is at least the Texas version of cheese dip, right?
Jars of queso.
It's cheese.
Always
you
learn
dip
something with
stuff
Ben
in it.
paints. Car Wars Companion ship date. I don't have that information in the studio here.
Hmm.
I believe
Probably
it's
not
close.
Too far off.
I believe it's
Yeah.
close, but unless anyone's watching that has the information, I don't know if they are. We'll have to go check on that Kickstarter and see if they watch for when they post an update. But I believe it's getting close. You know, I was in here yesterday playtesting some Star Wars stuff. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. Sneaky.
All right. So we'll see you guys next week for Gru back here. Go ahead and we've got 1 week left. So we'll be closing out this campaign probably late Wednesday, early Thursday next week. Probably noon is my guess because they usually run stop the same time that they started. So we'll wrap this up next week. You've got about 1 week to get those last at least 15 people in there. So you can say 1,000 people back this, maybe more. And we'll see you guys. And thank you for dropping by.
For Car Wars Companion, we said on the Kickstarter that we plan to start shipping it this week. That was
Okay.
2 days ago.
Okay.
Very good.
So
it should be soon.
shipping should be soon. The warehouse people are probably getting all those things together and in boxes.
Yeah.
And I will just drop a link if anyone wants to go read about that.
There you go. Right there. All right. And we will see everyone else hopefully back here next week at 2 p.m. on SJ Games Live. Thank you for coming by, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Have an